The red sun cast long shadows across the barren landscape as Dr. Marcus Chen checked the smoking wreckage of his research vessel one last time. The crash had destroyed most of his equipment, leaving him with only a basic survival pack and his handheld scanner. The air was breathable, but thin, making each step feel like a small challenge. At least the distress beacon is working, he muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his forehead. The planet's higher gravity was already making his muscles ache. According to his damaged navigation system, he was somewhere in the outer rim of known space, on a planet that had been marked as abandoned decades ago. The sound of falling rocks made him freeze. In the distance, a massive figure emerged from behind a cliff. Marcus's heart nearly stopped when he saw what it was. An Arcanian. The alien stood at least 8 feet tall, with silvery blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the red sunlight. Her muscular frame was covered in what appeared to be battle armor, though parts of it were damaged. The Arcanian spotted him immediately. In 3 long strides, she covered the distance that would have taken Marcus 10 steps. Her 4-fingered hand reached for a weapon at her hip, but found nothing there. "Human," she said in a deep, melodious voice that carried across the empty plain. "I am Cathera, sentinel of the 3rd Fleet. Are you responsible for the energy pulse that disabled my ship?" Marcus raised his hand slowly. "No, my ship crashed too. Something pulled me out of hyperspace and destroyed most of my systems." He tried to keep his voice steady, though his heart was racing. Arcanians were known for their strength and warrior culture, and he'd never heard of one showing mercy to a potential enemy. Thera's violet eyes narrowed as she studied him. "The same happened to my patrol vessel." She looked up at the sky. "We appear to be the only survivors on this rock." A distant rumble made them both turn. The ground trembled slightly, and in the far distance, a column of green gas erupted from a crack in the ground. "That's not good," Marcus said, checking his scanner. "The planet's crust is showing signs of intense instability. Those gases could be toxic." To his surprise, Cathera moved closer, her expression changing from suspicious to concerned. "My shelter is 2 kilometers east, in the mountains. It would be unwise for either of us to face these conditions alone." Marcus looked at the approaching gas cloud, then back at the towering alien warrior. The fact that she was offering shelter instead of leaving him to die meant something was seriously wrong. His scientific curiosity battled briefly with his survival instinct before he nodded. "Lead the way," he said, grabbing his pack from the wreckage. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, by the way, xenobiologist." As they hurried across the rocky terrain, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what kind of force could disable both their ships and strand them here. Whatever it was, he had a feeling this was just the beginning of their problems. Cathera's shelter turned out to be a cave reinforced with salvaged parts from her ship. Marcus studied the setup with admiration. She had managed to create an efficient living space in just a few days. The entrance was narrow enough to keep out larger predators, but still allowed for quick escape if needed. "Your scanner," Cathera said suddenly, pointing at the device in Marcus's hand. "It still works." Marcus nodded, checking the readings again. "It's basic, but functional. The mineral composition of this planet is strange. There's something interfering with our ship systems." Cathera pulled out a damaged piece of equipment from her armor. "Our technology is failing. Even my biosuit's power cells are draining faster than normal." A loud rumble shook the cave, sending small rocks cascading from the ceiling. Marcus steadied himself against the wall while Cathera remained perfectly balanced, her larger frame barely swaying. "We need to find out what's causing these disturbances," Marcus said, dusting himself off. "And why this planet was abandoned in the first place." Cathera's violet eyes narrowed. "Agreed. But first, we need supplies. There's an old mining facility 2 days' walk from here, if it hasn't been completely stripped." "I can help," Marcus interrupted. "I may not be as strong as you, but I know how to improvise with limited resources. It's something we humans had to learn early on." Cathera studied him for a moment. then nodded. Very well. We leave at first light. She pulled out some dried rations from her pack and tossed him a portion. You'll need your strength. As they ate, Marcus noticed Thera watching him with curiosity. What is it? He asked. You're not afraid of me, she stated. Most species cower before Arcanians. Marcus smiled slightly. Should I be afraid? We're both stuck here, and you haven't killed me yet. Besides, xenobiologists tend to be more curious than fearful. A strange sound escaped Cthera, something between a laugh and a snort. Your species is unusual. Our records say humans are physically weak, yet you've colonized worlds that would kill most species. We adapt, Marcus said simply. When you can't overpower something, you learn to outthink it. Another tremor shook the cave, stronger this time. Thera's hand instinctively moved to protect Marcus from falling debris, her massive frame easily shielding him. Tomorrow, she said, withdrawing her hand quickly, you can show me how humans adapt. For now, rest. I'll take first watch. As Marcus settled down to sleep, he couldn't help but smile. Somehow, he had gone from being stranded alone on an alien planet to forming an unlikely alliance with an 8-foot-tall warrior woman. If they survived, this would make one hell of a research paper. The mining facility loomed before them, a massive structure carved into the mountainside. Marcus and Cthera stood at its entrance, their shadows long in the red sunlight. The metal doors were corroded but still intact, bearing strange symbols that caught Marcus's attention. These markings, he said, running his fingers over the etched surface. They're warning signs. The miners abandoned this place in a hurry. Cthera pressed her hand against the door, her superior strength easily pushing it open with a grinding screech. Many species have tried to mine this world. None stayed long. Inside, their lights revealed a vast chamber filled with abandoned equipment. The air was stale but breathable. Marcus's scanner beeped continuously, detecting unusual energy readings from deeper within the facility. Look at this, Marcus called out, brushing dust off an old computer terminal. It's still got some power. His fingers worked quickly over the ancient keys, bringing the screen flickering to life. Thera moved closer, her massive frame casting a shadow over him. You can read these symbols. Some of them. They're similar to old Earth mining codes. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the data. This isn't just a mining facility. It's a research station. They were studying something in the planet's core. A distant rumble echoed through the facility, making them both tense. This time, the tremor felt different, more focused, almost rhythmic. That's not geological, Thera said, her warrior instincts alert. Something's down there. Marcus continued accessing the files, his expression growing more concerned. They found something while mining. Something that affected their equipment, just like what's happening to our ships. He turned to Cthera. They didn't abandon this planet. They were forced to leave. A louder rumble shook the facility, sending equipment crashing to the floor. Thera grabbed Marcus, pulling him away from a falling beam. Her body shielded him as debris rained down around them. We need to go deeper, Marcus said once the dust settled. Whatever's causing these disturbances is below us. Thera's violet eyes glowed in the dim light. Agreed. But stay close, human. Your size may be an advantage in these tunnels, but your fragility concerns me. Marcus smiled despite the tension. Worried about me, Sentinel? Merely being practical, she replied, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice. Lead the way with your scanner. I'll watch our backs. Together, they descended into the darkness, following the increasingly strong energy readings. Neither said it aloud, but both knew they were about to discover why this planet had been abandoned, and why they had been brought here. The deeper they descended into the facility, the stronger the energy readings became. Marcus's scanner was nearly overloading, its screen flickering with interference. The narrow maintenance tunnels forced Cthera to crouch, while Marcus moved more easily through the confined space. The readings are strongest through here, Marcus said, pointing to a small service tunnel. But it's too narrow for you. Cthera frowned. You are not going alone. We don't have a choice. Marcus checked his oxygen levels. I'll keep radio contact. If something happens, I can squeeze back quickly. Before Cthera could protest, a screech echoed through the tunnels, something that sounded neither mechanical nor natural. Her hand instinctively went to where her weapon should have been. That's close, she whispered, her warrior training evident in her tensed posture. Marcus crawled into the service tunnel, his heart pounding. The space was tight, but he managed to slide through with his scanner. Behind him, Cthera's eyes glowed in the darkness, watching intently. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber filled with strange machinery. In the center, a pillar of pulsing energy rose from the floor to the ceiling. Marcus's scanner went dead. Cthera, he called through the radio. I found something. It looks like some kind of energy reactor, but the technology is like nothing I've seen before. Static crackled over the radio. Then Cthera's urgent voice broke through. Marcus, get out. Something's coming through the main tunnel. The screech came again, closer this time, followed by the sound of falling rocks and Cthera's battle cry. Marcus turned to crawl back, but the tunnel entrance collapsed, trapping him in the chamber. Cthera, he shouted into the radio, receiving only static in response. Through the walls, he could hear the sounds of combat, heavy impacts, and more inhuman screeching. The energy pillar pulsed brighter, and ancient machinery began humming to life around him. Marcus realized with growing horror that whatever had brought their ships down, whatever had forced the original miners to flee, was waking up. In the main tunnel, Cthera fought against something that had emerged from the depths, a creature that seemed to be made of living crystal and energy. Her physical strength, normally overwhelming against any opponent, barely seemed to affect it. Marcus, she called out between dodging the creature's attacks. The energy pattern. It matches your scanner readings. Find a way to shut it down. Marcus turned to the ancient machinery, his mind racing. He had one chance to figure this out, or neither of them would make it out alive. Marcus worked frantically at the ancient control panel, trying to make sense of the symbols while the sounds of combat echoed through the walls. The energy pillar's pulsing had become more intense, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. The frequency. Cthera's voice crackled through the radio. It's affecting my armor systems. These creatures, they're drawing power from it. Marcus studied the pulsing pattern of the energy pillar. His scientific mind raced, connecting dots. They're not just drawing power, he called back. They're being created by it. This facility isn't a mine, it's an incubator. The wall beside him suddenly burst open, revealing Cthera wrestling with a crystalline creature. Her silvery blue skin was scratched, but her eyes blazed with warrior's fury. With a mighty heave, she threw the creature across the chamber. Any ideas, human? She asked, backing toward him. Your species is supposed to be good at solving impossible problems. Marcus's fingers flew over the control panel. The miners didn't abandon this place because they were afraid. They left because they couldn't control what they created. These creatures are living energy, manifested through the planet's unique mineral composition. Another creature emerged from the shadows. Cthera positioned herself between it and Marcus. Less science, more solutions. The pillar's frequency, Marcus said, pointing to his dead scanner. Your armor responds to specific energy patterns, right? If we can match the frequency. Cthera's eyes widened with understanding. She ripped off her damaged chest plate and tossed it to Marcus. Use it. But hurry. I can't hold them off much longer. Marcus connected the armor's power cell to the control panel, using it to analyze the energy pattern. The creatures moved closer, their crystalline forms glowing brighter. Cthera, he said softly, if this works, it might overload your armor completely. She glanced at him, a strange expression crossing her face. Your species' dedication to protecting others. Perhaps we Arcanians have underestimated you. She smiled fiercely. Do it. Marcus took a deep breath and activated the sequence. The armor's power cell began to pulse, matching the pillar's frequency, but in reverse phase. The crystalline creatures stopped, their forms flickering. The power cell's reversed frequency filled the chamber with a high-pitched whine. The crystalline creatures writhed, their forms becoming unstable. But the energy pillar grew brighter, fighting against the interference. "It's not enough power," Marcus shouted over the noise. "The pillar's too strong." Thera looked at the remaining pieces of her armor, then at Marcus. "My helmet's power cell. It contains emergency reserves." She tore it off. "But using both might cause an explosion." Marcus's eyes met hers. "The facility's original power core. If we can find it." A violent tremor shook the chamber, stronger than any before. Through newly formed cracks in the walls, they could see more crystalline creatures emerging. "No time," Thera said. She grabbed Marcus and pulled him behind a bank of machinery. "Use both power cells. I'll protect you from the blast." "That's suicide," Marcus protested. "The explosion could bring down the whole facility." Thera smiled, a surprisingly gentle expression on her warrior's face. "You've shown me that strength isn't just about physical power. Sometimes it's about making hard choices." Another tremor rocked the facility. The crystalline creatures were getting closer, their forms growing larger as they absorbed more energy from the pillar. Marcus quickly wired both power cells together, his hand steady despite the danger. "We'll need to trigger it remotely. The blast radius will be significant," Thera finished. She looked at the approaching creatures, then back at Marcus. "You know what must be done." Marcus worked faster, jury-rigging a remote trigger from his radio. "Together," he said firmly. "We either both make it out, or neither of us does." Thera's violet eyes widened in surprise, then filled with respect. "Your species' stubbornness." She nodded. "Together then, but we'll need to run fast." Marcus armed the makeshift bomb. "On my mark, we head for the maintenance shaft. It's our only chance." The creatures were almost upon them, their crystalline bodies casting prismatic light across the chamber. The energy pillar pulsed faster, as if sensing the threat to its existence. "Ready?" Marcus asked, finger on the trigger. Thera's hand found his shoulder. "Lead the way, human." Now, Marcus triggered the device and sprinted toward the maintenance shaft, Thera right behind him. The crystalline creatures surged forward, their forms merging into one massive entity. The makeshift bomb began to pulse rapidly, matching the pillar's frequency but growing stronger. The crystalline creatures hesitated, drawn between the two power sources. "The shaft's blocked," Thera called out, seeing the debris from earlier. Without hesitation, she grabbed Marcus and lifted him to her shoulder. "Hold tight." She charged at the blocked entrance, her powerful frame smashing through the debris. Behind them, the power cells reached critical levels, their whine becoming deafening. "Left tunnel," Marcus shouted, checking his rebuilt scanner. "It leads to the surface." Thera ran faster than Marcus thought possible, her long strides eating up the distance. The facility's walls cracked around them, energy tendrils snaking through the fissures. A blast wave caught them, throwing them forward. Thera curled her body around Marcus, taking the impact as they rolled. The tunnel behind them collapsed. "The creatures," Marcus coughed, trying to see through the dust. "They're still coming." Through the settling debris, crystal formations grew rapidly, reaching for them like glowing fingers. Thera pushed herself up, pulling Marcus with her. "The surface tunnel ceiling won't hold," she said, seeing the cracks spreading. "We'll be buried alive." Marcus's scanner beeped urgently. "The power cell's detonation. It's destabilizing the entire energy network. If it reaches the planet's core." They reached a junction where the tunnel split. One path led up to the surface, already showing signs of collapse. The other descended deeper into the facility. "The stabilization controls," Thera said suddenly. "The ones you found in the old records. Could they contain the blast?" Marcus's eyes widened. "Yes, but we'd have to reach the control room." It's in the opposite direction of safety. The facility shook violently. Chunks of ceiling crashed down around them. Farah looked at the surface tunnel, then at Marcus. "Choose," she said simply. "Run or fight." Marcus gripped his scanner tightly, meeting her violet eyes. Since when do humans run from impossible odds? Farah and Marcus raced through the collapsing tunnels toward the control room. The crystalline creatures had merged into a massive wave of energy, pursuing them relentlessly. There, Marcus pointed to a reinforced door marked with ancient warning symbols. The main control center. Farah smashed through the door with her shoulder, the metal crumpling like paper. Inside, rows of terminals flickered with emergency power. Marcus immediately began working on the main console while Farah barricaded the entrance. The stabilization system is still operational, but it needs more power. "Use my remaining armor," Farah said, already removing it. "The power cells are nearly depleted, but—" A crystal tendril smashed through their barricade, forcing Farah to dodge. She grabbed a piece of broken machinery, using it as a makeshift weapon. "Whatever you're going to do, Marcus, do it quickly." Marcus connected Farah's armor to the console, his fingers flying over the controls. The system's accepting the power, but it needs a command sequence. The original miners. They left instructions. The room shook violently as more crystal formations broke through. Farah fought them back, but each impact weakened their defenses. "The sequence," Marcus shouted over the chaos. "It's not just about containing the energy." They found a way to harness it. Farah slammed her improvised weapon into a crystal formation. "Then use it." Marcus initiated the sequence. The facility's remaining power redirected into the stabilization system. The crystal creatures froze, their energy being drawn into the planet's core through ancient channels. "It's working." Marcus watched the readings. The energy's being converted into a sustainable form. The planet. It's healing itself. Farah joined him at the console, her violet eyes reflecting the stabilizing energy patterns. "You did it, human." "We did it," Marcus corrected her, smiling despite his exhaustion. 3 days later, they stood on the surface, watching rescue ships descend from orbit, both human and Arcanian vessels, responding to their now functional distress beacons. "Your superiors won't be happy about sharing this discovery," Marcus said. Farah looked down at him, her expression softer than when they'd first met. "They'll adapt. After all, I learned from you that sometimes the smallest beings have the biggest impact." As the ships landed, Marcus grinned. "So, want to help me write the research paper? How a human scientist and an Arcanian warrior saved a planet has a nice ring to it." "First," Farah said, "you're teaching me more about human improvisation, and I'll teach you Arcanian combat techniques." "Deal," Marcus replied, realizing this wasn't an ending, but a beginning.